This man is right now, he's the most overrated in basketball.
10 feet and run and just dunk. Like, that takes no skill at all.
Do I think that he's the best player on the planet? No. Do I think that he is top 2? No.
Holiday throws it up, and Antetokounmpo with the slider. Tucker on him. Throws it up for 8. Shot blocked by Antetokounmpo. And Antetokounmpo throws it down.
Throughout these playoffs, many things have stood out. It could be the newfound parity that's taken place, how, unlike previous years, we actually didn't know who would be lifting the trophy. It could be the clutch shots, or the different narratives with players trying to capture their first ever ring. All of that sticks out, but what's most notable to me is the playoff rise of Giannis Antetokounmpo. For years, the NBA world has been calling this guy a playoff choker, saying he was ineffective when the lights shined brightest. Every season that went by was another early exit, and no matter the context, people still pinned it on the Greek Freak. Since many fans were so loud about how much of a quote-unquote choker Giannis was, I better see that same energy now when he performed at an all-time level. In fact, that narrative, that he doesn't perform well in the playoffs, that's a lie in itself. Fans and the media love to judge players when their sample size is so small, creating these colossal expectations when they're completely unjustified and flat out ignore all context. In order to truly get a full understanding of Giannis and his postseason career, we must venture back to his first playoff series against the Chicago Bulls. In 2015, the Greek Freak was in his second season and just 20 years old. That year, he averaged 13 points a night, getting his feet wet in the game of basketball. The expectations weren't high. The most notable moment of his first playoff series versus the Bulls was when he destroyed Mike Dunleavy, which, fun fact, was actually revenge because Dunleavy had pushed Michael Carter-Williams earlier that game. Truly a team player. Antetokounmpo also put up 25 and 12 in Game 3. The young emergence of a future superstar was put on full display with this performance. This series took place at a time where not many knew about Giannis and his potential. So many fans turned a blind eye to his few good games and wrote him off as just another young player. 2 years later, the 2017 playoffs had the Bucks face off against the Toronto Raptors. Both teams were hungry to prove themselves. The Raptors coming in favorite after having their farthest run in franchise history the previous postseason. At this point in his career, people knew of Antetokounmpo's potential. In fact, many were expecting him to emerge as a star player within the near future, so now could be a chance to prove himself. 28 points in a Game 1 victory on the road, shocking the Toronto crowd. This was his first true domination in the playoffs. All the all-time greats have these moments. He was simply destroying the paint, unstoppable, you couldn't hold him back. The next game he scored 24 in a loss, but in a decisive Game 3, on 70% shooting, he had 19 in a blowout win. The Raps ended up winning the last 3 and taking the series, but Giannis was everything you'd want him to be. 30 points in Game 5, 34, a new playoff high in an elimination Game 6. This was all with his second-hand man Chris Middleton dealing with hamstring issues, and his team not having the most talent. The Bucks were slowly knocking on the door of the Eastern Conference, and so was Giannis with his unlimited potential. He was gonna reach it soon. The 2018 playoffs took place 1 season before the Giannis explosion. His squad was the 7th seed and faced off against the injury-riddled Celtics, so the series was evenly matched to many, with both sides having a chance to win. That's what many thought, and justifiably so. Boston was without Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. The thing is, with what we know now, the C's actually play better without the two of them, and it showed with how they were 1 game away from the finals. The soon-to-be MVP asserted himself with a monster 35-point performance in Game 1, followed by a Game 2 30-point bomb. Both of them came in losses, and these L's obviously weren't Giannis's fault. he played valiantly. Down 2-0, his team rallied back and won the next 2 games with 19 and 27 points for the Greek Freak respectively. The team lost Game 5 and Giannis didn't play amazing, but like most cases, when he struggles, he bounces back the next game. Down 3-2, he responded with 31 points and 14 rebounds to force a Game 7. His team lost in 7 overall, but there shouldn't be any doubt that Giannis showed up. He averaged 26 and 10 against a much superior team and challenged them to a 7-game series. That in itself deserves praise. The team around him just wasn't good. Without Giannis, they'd be in the lottery. The Greek Freak had taken this squad and put up incredible performances, playing teams that were so much better than them and coming close to beating them, but it just wasn't enough. This is where many stars would falter. Similar players in Giannis' position request trades or simply don't make the jump to greatness. Antetokounmpo, however, was simply different. He used this tough loss as motivation, jumping to one of the best players in the league in a matter of 1 summer. His team won 60 games, going from an afterthought 7 seed to a record-breaking number 1 seed. That's what people don't give him credit for. The sudden leap, not only in his game, but his team as a whole. Fast forward to the 2019 playoffs. You could say this was Giannis' first chance at a title run. He was on his way to his first MVP award, was the unequivocal number 1 seed, and was just 24. Yes, the loss to the eventual champion Toronto Raptors was tough. But what about the previous 2 series? The Bucks absolutely annihilated the Pistons in the first round, Giannis playing star-studded basketball. Then in the next round, they did the exact same, destroying the Celtics and finishing it off with a gentleman's sweep. The same Celtics team that was favored by many to take home the championship was easily taken apart by the Bucks. But you don't hear that talked about as much. Over the entire playoffs against the Pistons, Celtics, and Raptors, he averaged 25 points per game, 12 rebounds, and 5 assists on near 50% shooting. A team with arguably the greatest defense of all time, the Raptors, focused all of their energy onto him, and he still put up 23 and 13. His field goal percentage did drop, but this is where context is important. His teammates were shooting terribly. Eric Bledsoe shot 17%, Nikola Mirotic shot 19%, Ersan Ilyasova shot 27%, Brook Lopez shot 31%, and his all-star teammate, Chris Middleton, shot 41%. When you're the number 1 option and an entire defense is focused on you, you obviously want to kick it out and get your teammates involved. Those same teammates stunk it up. Now, Giannis didn't play as well as he was capable of, but the narrative that he somehow choked is heavily exaggerated. The Raptors double-teamed, they swarmed Giannis, and the only option was to pass it to his teammates, who couldn't step up. This strategy really came about after Game 2 when the Bucks had a 2-0 lead. Toronto gambled and left other Bucks players open, and they missed. It just happens. This is when the playoff choker narrative really began to form, and as you can see, it's completely unjustified. Let's move on though. Giannis arrived in the bubble for the 2020 playoffs, freshly off of his 2nd straight MVP. His team faced off against the Miami Heat and got destroyed in 5. An absolute shocker that surprised many. This was truly the first big disappointment in Giannis' career. 22 and 10 was below his season averages, but as many failed to take into account, context once again matters. His starting point guard shot 33% from the field and 21% from 3. It also could have been the bubble. Seeing how the Heat fell from a finals run last year to a first-round exit now shows that the bubble was a little bit funky. But sure, go ahead and say he choked when the roster around him wasn't optimally built for his playstyle. His so-called shooters weren't exactly helping, and his coach Mike Budenholzer got beat by opposing coaches on the regular. It was trouble in paradise. Like I said, many players in this position would look to choose another organization. Giannis, however, well, if you've been paying attention, magician, that's not who he is. Fast forward to now. At the beginning of this playoff run, many NBA fans expected more of the same heartbreak for the Bucks. Without diving into the numbers, it's easy for any outsider to be critical of Giannis's quote-unquote playoff failure. Any narrative that may have formed on ESPN, any claims of him being a choker, were all put to rest for good in these playoffs. All the greats have gone through these moments. Whether it's LeBron winning 2 straight rings after the 2011 meltdown, or Jordan finally surpassing the Pistons, this would be the moment for the Greek Freak. His team steamrolled through the Heatles, sweeping them effortlessly, with Giannis averaging 23 and 15. You'll notice his points aren't as high, and that's because he doesn't need to score. He's finally in a position where he can kick it out to a teammate and trust that they'll get a bucket. All season long, fans and the media were commenting on opposing Heat player Bam Adebayo, saying he was the kryptonite to Giannis. When they matched up, the Greek Freak feasted. It's almost as if the bubble team constructed around Giannis wasn't good enough, and the blame that went towards him should have gone elsewhere. But I digress, because the Bucks then faced off against the super team Brooklyn Nets. This was another series where legacies are made. Giannis went against the number 2 seeded Nets, led by Kevin Durant. Yes, Kyrie Irving got injured. Yes, James Harden was not 100%. You know what's also a fact? That Giannis averaged 32 points per game and 13 rebounds on 57% shooting in the biggest series of his life. His team dropped the first 2 games, going down 2-0. As a response, the Greek Freak dropped 34 points 3 straight times, with a 40-point bomb in Game 7, willing his team through overtime to win the series. A spirited, legendary performance for number 34. But he wasn't done yet. There was still much work needed to be completed. The Bucks were back in the Eastern Conference Finals, and this time squared up against the Atlanta Hawks. Giannis immediately went on a tear, dropping over 25 points in the first 3 games before he suffered a gruesome knee injury that sidelined him for the rest of the series. This could have been it. One of the greatest playoff runs in NBA history could have been cut short due to one play. Fortunately for us, Milwaukee managed to fend off the Hawks, win in 6, and make it to the NBA Finals, with Antetokounmpo returning for Game 1. Milwaukee had done it! They've arrived in the Finals for the first time since 1974, facing off against the Suns. In Game 1, Giannis struggled, but this was obviously due to him returning from injury and not being 100%. In Game 2, he dropped 42, a spectacular performance that came in a loss. It was panic time in Milwaukee. If Giannis has these type of games and the Bucks still fall short, well, there's a problem. Down 2-0, like we've seen so many times throughout NBA history, anybody could fold in this moment. Giannis, however, well, you get it by now. 41 points on 60% shooting in a do-or-die Game 3, followed by 26 points in a Game 4 W to tie the series at 2 games apiece. Then in Game 5, he had 32 in a win, 1 game away from the championship. He's had some iconic highlights as well. This block on DeAndre Ayton may go down as one of the best in finals history. Now pause. This finals run is truly unlike anything we've ever seen before. Giannis, at 26 years old, in his 8th season, averaged 29 and 13 in the postseason. When LeBron James was in his 8th season at 26, the playoff stats are just as good, if not worse than Giannis's. Same thing can be said for Shaq, who lost in the 2nd round when he was 26. Do you see the significance yet? Game 6, a chance to bring the championship home in front of Bucks fans. The one glaring weakness throughout Giannis' career has been his free throw shooting, but in the most important game of his life, he shot 17 of 19 from the stripe. That shows hard work, that shows commitment. discipline to your game. He dropped 50 points, 5-0, the first player in NBA Finals history to have these numbers. It may just be the single greatest game by one player ever. The Bucks defeated the Suns in 6, winning their first championship in half a century as Giannis, the so-called choker, is immortalized in NBA history. This playoff run we've just witnessed should go down as one of the greatest we've ever seen from any player. This may surprise many, but for those who've been watching Giannis, this is no surprise. Championship, Finals MVP, 2 regular season MVPs, Defensive Player of the Year. Nobody in NBA history has done all of that at age 26. We've seen his work ethic, his endless drive, his constant motivation to play the best he can. We've seen his loyalty, how he has no friends on the court and has one goal, which is winning. He could have formed a super team, but stayed in the small market and trusted his franchise. We've seen the negative narratives begin to form. People falsely calling him a playoff choker, ignoring any and all context for the sake of bringing the man down. We've seen it all, but one thing's for certain. If you criticize Giannis, be sure to acknowledge the NBA championship to his name before doing so.